Our second story comes from Australia. The big tech company in focus here is Facebook. Facebook has pulled the plug on news in Australia. It has blacked out news content from its platform, which basically means if you're in Australia, if you're watching us from Australia, you cannot watch us on Facebook. You will not get news on Facebook. Australian publishers and people cannot share news on Facebook anymore. On Instagram too, which as you would know is owned by Facebook. So much for bringing the world closer. The Australian government is outraged, Australian citizens are upset, but Facebook remains defiant. It is hiding behind an excuse. It says not many Australians consume news on its platform. How true is this? And what made Facebook take this decision in the first place? What does it mean for Australian publishers? And what lessons should the world learn from this episode? Here is Facebook's status update from Australia.
On Thursday morning, Australians woke up to find their Facebook newsfeed empty. Every news page they went to had turned blank. Many stepped out of their homes in search of answers. It didn't take long for them to realise that Facebook had unfriended Australia, that it had blocked access to news for all Australians, a dramatic escalation of a dispute over paying for content, and a reckless move. Official health pages, emergency safety groups, welfare networks, charities, they've all gone dark. Scrubbed from Facebook along with news. Australian citizens are worried.
I think Facebook banning news is terrible, actually. I do use Facebook. It seems to be a catch-all, and I can get all of my news in the one spot, so it will really impact me.
The Australian government is infuriated.
This is an assault on a sovereign nation. It is an assault on people's freedom, and in particular, it is an utter abuse of big technologies, market power and control over technology.
But how did things come to such a pass? This is the result of a year-long battle between Canberra and tech giants. In 2019, Google made $4.8 billion in advertising revenue. And Facebook made more than $500,000. But only a fraction of this revenue was shared with Australian media organisations. News organisations whose stories and analysis was helping tech giants mint money. So, in December 2020, Australia tabled a law to make Google and Facebook pay for news, to negotiate a fair payment with news organisations for using their content.
This is a huge reform. This is a world first. And the world is watching what happens here in Australia.
This week, Google agreed to the deal. It signed a multi-million-dollar agreement with two of Australia's biggest media companies, but Facebook did not. It said that the Australian law fundamentally misunderstands the relationship between Facebook and news publishers. Facebook claims that news makes up just 4% of what Australians view on its platform. But a 2020 University of Canberra study revealed that at least 39% of Australians use Facebook for news. Facebook's reach in Australia is wider than it likes to show. Australia has a total population of 25 million. Out of these, 11 million are on Facebook, and the platform takes in 24% of Australia's total advertising expenditure. To simplify it further, for every $100 spent by advertisers, $53 goes to Google, $28 goes to Facebook, and $19 to all other websites. Australia's new law is only aimed at ensuring that news media businesses are fairly remunerated, but Facebook clearly does not agree.
The principle is very clear. Google and Facebook are important parts of the digital ecosystem in Australia. They're important parts of the economy. We've made it clear that we want them to continue operating here, but we've also made it clear that if you do business in Australia, you need to comply with the law of the land of Australia.
This tug of war has now reached its tipping point. Australian citizens will suffer the most. At a time when the world is dealing with the pandemic, they will not be able to read or share news content on Facebook. Australian news publishers will not be able to post important updates. Facebook has decided on profit over people. The implications will be global. The world is watching.
This will go around the world, but this stops. This is unacceptable. I will say this. Apparently their original mission was to bring the world closer together and to allow people to help share and express what matters to them. Well, that seems to have been replaced by profit over people. We say to Facebook, stop this now, and perhaps it's time to put people over profit.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.